Hi guys, welcome back. We're continuing with our talk on functions. We're now discussing the quadratic function. The quadratic function comes also from the linear function. So if you think about this, we just taking this quadratic, we know means the degree is what? 2. So if you think about this, I have ax. Remember, I had this thing for the linear function. Remember that? Now, all I'm going to do to make this quadratic is to square that. That's it. And there I have my quadratic function. So that's the first and the most simple or basic form. And at least in grade 11, you were able to shift this graph horizontally. We've explained this previously, and vertically. Again, I'm using the same parameters. And you know, this is, again, as I said, your shape parameter. In the case of a linear function, A determines whether you're going to have a positive slope or a negative slope. But now, in the case of a parabola, you have the same kind of shape, but it is in different what inversion, so to say, for lack of a better word. So let me explain quickly what I mean. So if I've got a parabola, maybe I should use my line feature here to kind of draw my straight lines. So I'll do that, and I'll draw this. There's my Cartesian plane. Yes, this looks much better actually. Yeah, I'll use this from now on. Now, when you draw a parabola, the standard parabola, in other words, this one here, the mother function, y equals to ax squared, then you're going to have a happy face there, okay? There's y equals to ax squared because the graph is positive. Some say it's a cup shape, some say it's a happy face. Now, if you're going to draw this, y equals to minus ax squared, then you know that this is down, and that's a sad face or a cap face, as some would prefer to say. So this is the general form. As I said, you can see what A does. A positive, you are smiling, you are happy, it's a cap. A negative, you are sad, it's a cap that you are wearing, whichever way you'd like to say it. So the important thing then is to understand, as I said, as in the straight line, as I've mentioned, what now P does. So if I take this thing and I say, well, let's take this, and I say y equals to a into x plus 2 squared, okay, minus 1. Then there's something very important here to note. Because I've got an x plus 2 here, and we usually solve for intercepts and stuff like that, I must do this, set up an equation where I say x plus 2 equals to 0, and solving for x, I have negative 2. Now, for you to see this, you are actually you will need to actually simplify this. So you're going to have to use FOIL. In other words, you're going to have to say A, and then if you use FOIL here, x, okay, plus 4x plus 4 minus 1, which simplifies to what? This simplifies to ax squared plus 4ax plus 4a minus 1, where 4a minus 1 is your constant term. What I've just introduced here is another form of this quadratic function. So in other words, there are two ways to write the quadratic function. You can write it in this form, and this is the form where we say the square has been completed. You can look into the grade 11 content for that if you want to remind yourself. Otherwise, the other standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. Or if you want to include the effect of a minus ax plus bx plus c. And of course, I'm not saying B will always be negative, will be positive. It can be negative. The same thing with C can be negative. There's another form that you need to be aware of. And if you recall the topic on the nature of roots that was discussed also in grade 11, you will realize that, oh, actually, this is where the axis of symmetry formula or equation comes from, the turning point. There's a shortcut to find the turning point. In this one here, the turning point here, okay, is essentially, okay, let me come to this graph here, so that I do not confuse you. So let me look into this graph here, this one here. I will try and use a different color. So let's see, you look into this graph here. So what is happening here is that if I'm looking for my turning point, coordinates of the turning point, you should always know it will be P and Q. Okay. Now, what will happen is if I want my P there, I should now say turning point. Actually, I'm battling within my mind whether I should write minus P or what, but I hope you get this clear. My turning point for this function is going to be what? -2 and -1. That's going to be my turning point. In other words, if I were to draw this function, I don't need to use a table and, go through the whole process of pain. The lazy mathematician wants to be efficient, wants to save time and all that. So all I'll do is I go and find -2 on my graph. Let's suppose that's -1, that's -2, -1, -2, and that becomes my turning point. The next thing that happens or that remains is to find the x-intercepts. And that means I must put y to be 0. For argument's sake, we can see here, because we don't have a, I did not specify what a is. So let's take a as 1. So taking a as 1, then that suggests that finding the x-intercepts, I put y to be 0, just reminding you how to sketch the graph basically. And then you're going to have x plus 2. We have figured this out. So this is going to be x squared plus 4x plus 4 minus 1. So basically now you have to factorize an equation here. You have to factorize this. And I know some of you will rush to your calculators. That's really okay with me. You can use that. Otherwise, if you feel you can factorize, of course, 3 and 1, this thing here, 4 minus 1 is 3, and 3 is a prime number. You're going to have this simply factorized as x plus 3 into x plus 1. And then you know that your x-intercept, therefore, will be -3 and -1. So we said that's -2. We said this is -1. So then your graph will go into something like this. If we want the y-intercept, we put that to be 0. We're going to have 4 minus 1, which is 3. So this thing will cross somewhere there. And then if I were to draw a rough sketch, really, really rough one, that's how my parabola would look like. So just to recap a little bit, to remind you of how these things work, how the parabola looks like, what are the parameters, responsible for, it's just essentially what was the case with the straight line. So I hope this has become of help. Of course, you are allowed to comment down on this video. If there's anything that it is not clear, you can give me a heads up. I'm more than happy to clarify. Otherwise, we are also on WhatsApp. You can also comment through WhatsApp, and I'll put that number down for WhatsApp: 073 24 888 06. And of course, this is a South African number. As I said earlier on, we seek to actually work with those who are doing CAPS mostly. So yeah, you can get hold of me on this number, and then I will try my best to reply to your comments and requests as much as fast as possible. Otherwise, I'll leave it here for now and move on to the section where I'll discuss the hyperbola. Thank you very much.